Good evening. Campaigners are calling for a change of attitude towards victims of sexual abuse, particularly within the Asian community. Research carried out in Coventry has revealed that victims, the majority of them women, often end up being blamed for the attacks. They can also be put under pressure to stay silent in order to protect the family's honour, meaning they don't feel they can seek help to deal with the trauma. Poonam Taneja has been hearing one woman's story.
That evening there was one, two, probably about 5 of the men. My clothes were being ripped and torn apart. I ended up having stitches after the ordeal.
Suffering in silence. Even though this woman, who we're calling Raj, was an adult when she was raped, she was too scared to say anything. But when she eventually plucked up the courage to tell her family, their reaction shocked her.
I was told to go and commit suicide and that I was dead for the family. I had disgraced the family. They'd hire money out instead and have somebody kill me. It was all about getting rid of me.
And she's not alone. According to a report for a support group for victims of rape, Asian victims of such crimes are silenced by a culture of honour and shame.
Some women have said that they've experienced sexual violence for decades, and they also talked about how not only are they experienced sexual violence and become victims, but then they become victims again by being silenced by their families and communities.
Although the research was carried out in Coventry, campaigners say this is a nationwide problem.
Good afternoon, Carmen Ivana.
Jasvinda Sangera has campaigned against such things. The findings of the report come as no surprise to her.
Who is going to believe, the victim or the male perpetrator? They have the power to know that it is them who will be believed and protected by the system of honour and shame. And it will be the victim who will be blamed and who will be ostracised and isolated.
Campaigners and victims say attitudes within the community now have to change.
Family, especially parents, need to realise how much damage is done because of honour, and they need to start thinking what's more important. Is it honour or is it the happiness of your child?
Poonam Taneja, Midlands Today.
Well, earlier I spoke to Faiza Vaid, who's the Executive Director of the Muslim Women's Network, which is based in Birmingham, and I began by asking her how common experiences like Raj's were.
It's always been common, it's always been there in our societies, but increasingly stories are emerging and girls are being brave enough to come forward to highlight their stories and their experiences. And the shock factor of a video like that should shock us, actually. And
does it shock you personally?
Yes, yes. Even though I've heard, I mean, the Muslim Women's Network did research last year and released that research of over 35 cases of child sexual exploitation with similar patterns as we saw in the video. But it doesn't get any nicer to watch, and it shouldn't. And I'd like us to remain at that point, because until we eradicate this problem, it should keep surprising us.
But how can the honour code be so powerful that it leads to something like this, where a victim is rejected by her own family?
I think in this situation we have to recognise that there is no honour in these crimes, and that the parents and the families who uphold this misplaced honour are also part of the problem, and they are colluding with the perpetrators, because if you're not standing out and you're not speaking about this issue, then actually you are part of the problem, and you are further victimizing these young girls and boys who are going through these experiences.
So is it a generational thing? Do you think as the years go by, the younger generation, people such as yourself, will be more and more against what's going on, and therefore attitudes will change through that?
If I'm being optimistic, I'd like to think so, but we have to accept that misogyny exists in our societies in every sphere, whether that's in the Asian culture or whether it's mainstream society. And we have misogynistic men of my age and younger, as we do of generations before us. So I actually feel that unless the rest of us really push this agenda and push these practices out and push these attitudes out, this misogyny will continue, and this honour code will continue in the same way. So we really have to fight together to overcome this.
Faiza Vaid, thank you.
Thank you.
Lawyers for